How's it going? My name is MeMan or Kurt, and I am bringing you my AutoHotKey tutorial for my GamePad. Finally here. Sorry it's taken so long. So this is just a fairly basic AutoHotKey tutorial that's specifically aimed at obviously the GamePad. So we're just going to learn how to remap that, and I'll go over some other sort of basic stuff which might be useful and is sort of related. Yeah, so quickly, if I didn't explain it properly in the other videos, like the ones previous to this, the reason why we're using AutoHotKey, because it allows us to remap the GamePad so that it'll emulate the keyboard, so you can make it press WASD, which means that if you decide not to use your GamePad, your keyboard will still work, and it means that when you start up a new, install a new game, it normally automatically goes to a WASD by default, because that's what most people are using, well, pretty much everyone. So by emulating that, it means that you won't have to remap, you won't have to change all the settings, the keyboard controls in the game before you play it, and that would be annoying if you had to do that with every time you bought a new game. So that's essentially why, and it's definitely useful, and you can then use it for macros and all sorts of stuff. So it's good stuff, and that's why we're doing it. I am filming my keyboard at the moment. Not that much use because there's no keys on my keyboard, or no letters, but at least you can see the GamePad. It'd be cool if you could see my foot pedals, because I'll be using those, but that's not a big issue. So let's get started. Now the first step, and I think this step is important, you should draw out your GamePad as a representation of all the buttons which are available to you. So as you can see here, I'm drawing out, and I've got this is a NumPad, then I've got the four-way analog stick plus the inward button, and the 6 pedals, and I've even put some of the input for your mouse, because I'm going to remap some of those as well. So draw it all out, and then we're going to label them as well. Okay, so then you need to decide what you're going to remap each button to. Now, like I said, I'm going to try and emulate a QWERTY keyboard, so the foundations, we're going to start with WASD, that makes sense. Also this, oh, I did that wrong, this shouldn't be, that should be one key, and that is going to be Shift. I should make note that on my on my NumPad, this is a 000, which really is not in use to us. It's not something that can be remapped, so that key is kind of useless, but it's okay to the side. And this is numlock. We're also not going to remap that into anything. So yeah, so this is we're going to put E here, Q here, they're next to each other. F will go here. From here, things are going to start making a little bit less sense. Now I'm going to put R here. Probably would have gone there, but I'm going to put it here because that's something I got used to. I hit down on the analog stick to reload, and because of that, I'm going to put the G that would be over here on a QWERTY over here. That's going to be G. C is going to go down here. Now this key here, I'm going to reserve for a macro, so I'm not going to remap that to anything. This is Backspace, and I'm not going to remap that, because you can if you want to, but it means that if you exit out of the game or you want to start typing, if you make a mistake every time you hit Backspace, let's say you remap this to X, it's going to hit X, and that will be annoying. So just keep in mind, you might not want to remap that one. Okay, what else? Now, I like to have the numbers 2 and 1 on the buttons on my mouse, just because they're normally the 2 main weapons in most games, and I just know on every game they're my 2 main weapons there. Now, on a QWERTY, you normally have the numbers running just above your number keys. Now, we already have 1 and 2, so we might as well change these to other numbers. So I'm going to put 3, 4, and 5, just because 3 and 4 and 5 are more likely to use, but sometimes you might need 6, you might even need 7, but anyway. So I'm going to put 6 there, just in case I do need it. It is there, it's not in order, but that's fine. 3, 4, 5, and if I need 6, it's going to be over here. I'm going to put this to B. Now, space is obviously something that's going to, space bar is obviously a very important key, but I haven't done that yet. I'm going to put this over on my foot pedal. Over here. Space. I'm going to put control over here. And that's really all the important stuff, I think, but the rest is sort of just putting other common keys, other common things that are close to the WASD. So well actually I'm going to reserve 2 other keys for macros in case I need them. I just like to have keys that I know aren't pressing anything and I can make them into macros later. And 3 should be plenty, and I've got enough keys here to press anything else. I'm going to make this set on 1 tab. I like that there, so if I ever need to check the score or anything, tab's normally that, and that'll be there. So the rest I'm just going to basically assign random keys to. So I'm going to make this X, going to make this U, going to make this N, going to make this V, and this Z. And that is everything. Now you should keep this close by even after you remap, just in case, because at first you're not going to remember where every key is. And let's say you start a new game and it says press this key to do this action, and you're not sure where it is. It is remapped somewhere on your GamePad. Just so you know where it is, it's useful to have this around. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is install AutoHotKeys. Now it is free, so that's very, very convenient. So I'll probably put a link in the description, but it's pretty easy to find. Here's the homepage, there's download there, and if you use the internet more than a dozen times in your life, I'm sure you'll be able to figure out how to install that. Alrighty, so now I'm just going to go over the very basics of our remapping. So now that once you've installed AutoHotkey, when you right click and go to new, there should now be an AutoHotkey script thing there. You can rename it, I'll call it test for no reason. Then when you go, if you double click on it, it's going to just run the script. Right click, going edit script is going to open up in NumPad. So there's already some stuff up there, they put it there by default, just leave that there, it helps. So the very basics for remapping is you press, so we're going to go A, double colon, B, oops, that's not B. I don't know what B is, shiz. A double colon B. That will remap A to B. So if I save this and run it, now A should remap to B. So here's A and it's pressing B. So if I press B, B and A both press B. So that's very basic. So we're going to do that to our NumPad to remap it to WASD and everything, all the other goodies that we want, and everything that we drew on that thing before. So I'm going to get rid of this, don't need that, and I'm going to go over some other stuff. So obviously we're going to want to remap this analog stick here, and so there's without going into it too much, I will just show you basically some code. So this will be available to you. You can pretty much just copy and paste. This is something I've got from the examples that are in the help file, which come with it. So this here is the help file. Now there's a lot of tutorials in here, and I suggest you look through this. And so essentially, I've just taken that and made it work how I want. The things you can tweak is, firstly, another thing I should explain is if you put a semicolon, anything after that on that line is just counted as a comment, so it doesn't affect the script. So if you want to put notes in your code, which is highly recommended, you can. So here I've put these notes after each thing, which tells me which direction I'm pushing the analog stick. So push up, which maybe should be pull up, push down, pull back, and push forward. So I know what those are. So that'll remap it to A, B, C, D. So push up will be A, rudder. Because it's an analog value, it's saying joy R, which it's getting the analog input is greater than 70. It goes from 0 to 100. Then it will then press A, else if. It's just an else if chain. So if you want to make it more sensitive, you can make it closer to 50, because 50 is in the middle. So you can make this 60 and this 40, or you can make this 80 and this 20 to make it so you have to push all the way like closer to the end. That's up to you. So there's some things you can tweak, but other than that, there's not really much you're going to want to change about this. If you are interested in learning more about it, by all means, but you don't really need to know everything that's going on in here. Just these are the buttons you change to what you want it to remap to, and you can change the sensitivity by changing some of these numbers. I don't want to save anything I did in there. The next thing I'm going to show you how to remap is point of view, because alright, if I just go into control panel here, devices and printers, right click, get the properties of our gamepad up. Oh, that's not what I wanted, not properties. We want to go settings, then properties. Okay, so here we've got our Z and R. Oh, that's one thing I should have covered. Sorry, missed out on that. Is so this here is go on. As you can see, when I change the on the analog stick, it's changing the Z axis and the Z rotation. Now I'm not sure why that's called Z rotation, because it's the R axis. As far as AutoHotKey is concerned, it's the R axis. So that's what this is here. Get key state, Joy I, Joy R, Joy Z, Joy Z. It's basically saying, telling AutoHotKeys to pay attention to the analog inputs of those axes, because it wouldn't do that normally. So there's a chance though, see how there's this XY axis here? There's a chance that you'll use, if using a different gamepad, the one we pulled apart slightly differently, you might be using the XY axis. So if that's the case, then obviously just wherever you see Joy R and Joy Z, they'll become Joy X and Joy Y. So that's just a small different, just something you have to change if that's a problem, but it won't be if you have the same one as mine, just depending. Where was I? Okay, so point of view, this is something that would be the buttons, the arrow buttons on the controller. Now, if you can just avoid these altogether, which is in some ways a good idea, because they can be, again, it's more code. You can just remap the Joy buttons, which are fairly simple compared to this. But if you happen to want to use every button on, like get every button out, use every button because you want to have all sorts of buttons, then you will want to use the point of view buttons, and if so, then here's some code for it. Oh, I keep forgetting stuff, so well, I'll explain it in here. So again here, because the way it works, from 315 degrees to 360 degrees is the same, is like it goes from 315 to 360, then to 0 to 45, and you want that to be the same because that's essentially like pointing up. So that's why these are both, key to hold down is A, but then from there it's B, C, D, like these are the different, there's your 4 different buttons. If you notice the first one up here, if the point of view is 0, no angle to report, key to hold down, it's nothing, that's blank, and you should leave that blank because that means it's got something to default to, and you want the default to be nothing, otherwise it'll start pressing whatever you put here. So just leave that blank, and it's the same, which I forgot here, it's the same on the analog remapping, it's down the bottom of this one. So after all the else ifs, the last one, else, key to hold down, that's blank as well, and the same thing. If nothing else, if the Joy is not moved anywhere, then it should be hitting nothing. So that's something you want to keep blank, just in case it causes any confusion. Okay, now to remap the Joy buttons. Now this is slightly, it's not quite what you'd expect. So when we go to remap, so like I said, you want to remap A to something, or B. Oh, I've got to finish that. Exit that script because A is still pressing B. Test, or exit that. Okay, so if you want to remap A to something, just A double column, whatever key, A to H. That's how you do that. However, you need to know what the buttons are called to remap them. So on the NumPad, I'll go over that in a while. But what are the Joys called? Well, they're called, on a gamepad, they're just Joy numbered from 1 to 32. And if you're ever confused, this is where this comes in handy. Go to the help file, which I think I've already got open, and you can go list of keys, list those objects, list of topics, where is it, list of mouse and Joy. So here it's got everything. It's got the mouse buttons, keyboard, the numpad, the F buttons, and here we go, joystick. So Joy 1 to 32, so that's what they're called. So I'll go back into this. So you might think you just go like this, Joy 4, whatever the button is, and if you want to know what button you're pressing at any one time, you just go into here and you can see that, is this working? Yeah, so I'm pressing Joy 4, here I'm pressing Joy 12, and so like, so that's just, you can just go, oh that's 9, so make this 9. Joy 9 remaps to 8. That won't work. Just the way Joy they're slightly different, so that doesn't quite work, and that's a problem. what you can do is you can send A. That does work, however, problem with that is it sends it momentarily. So if you write that Joy9 send A and you run it, when you press Joy9 it will send A. So in a notepad like this you'll get A come up. However, if you want to hold down Joy9, so a good example of this is, let's say you want Joy9 to press C, because in some games C is crouch. Now if crouch in that game is toggle on and toggle off, then that's fine. It'll press C and you'll toggle down crouch, you press C again and you'll stand back up. However, if you need to hold down C to continually crouch, then this won't work, because even though you're holding Joy9 down, it only sends that C for a split second. So when you're remapping Joy keys, you have to do it like this gross code here. It's not gross, it's not too bad, but there's what, 4 lines there plus return. So this here Joy4 is pressing down, is holding down control. So it's fairly basic logic. Joy4 is sending left control down, then it's waiting for Joy4, waiting for pressed, like remain pressed down, then it sends it up at the end, and then that's that. So if you need to remap joys, I highly recommend, even though you might think, oh, I don't need it, it's only toggle and the other one looks neater, you might as well, because you're probably going to use this script for everything, use a longer code that is better. So that's how you remap the joy buttons. And so you can change, obviously there's Joy4 appears twice in there, so you change both of those to Joy9 or 6 or whatever the joy you want to remap is, and the button that you want to change it to is, let's say A. You can just change both these to A, and now that will remap to A. So simple stuff. What do we have next? I wanted to go over the joys. Oh yeah, so what we'll do now is we'll just have a quick look at the script I'm currently using on my GamePad. So they're in 2, and I'll explain why, and it's basically because I'm not good at AutoHotKey. So there's this here, this basically gives it high process priority, which means essentially I figure it'll reduce input lag. It'll be somewhat unnoticeable anyway, but just in case I put that in there. There's these lines here which I'll explain a little bit later, but here's my scripting here. So this is just that script you saw before, except for I've got not A, B, C, D, I've got Z, R and V, and I've got this blank because I've kind of reserved that for a macro should I want a macro in there. So I've just reserved that, and then that's just the same as what you saw before. Alright, now down the bottom here I've got the analog click in, stick click in, and so this is actually clicking the stick in, and so that is a joy button. So I've used these 4 lines that I showed you before to press tab, and that is important because, you know, well, you probably know in most games tab will bring up the, well, at least FPS will bring up the scoreboard, and that does need to be held in to continue to look at it. So that's important that I don't just have the send tab, because that really wouldn't work. Now here's my NumPad remap. Now to get what all the NumPad buttons are called, we can just refer back to the help file. Here it is here. This is what they're all called, so you know what they're called, and I've organized mine in rows. So I've done it, the first row has the divide, the mult and the sub across it, so, and that's remapped to GF, and that one's reserved for macro. Row 2 is 5ED, it's all fairly basic stuff. Row 3, oh yeah, so special note to this one, Backspace, I haven't remapped here because if I remap Backspace to something and then want to type, then I can't, if I make a mistake then I can't backspace. You can make this work, and I'll explain, like, you can make it only, the backspace only works in certain windows, which means it's not so much a problem, but it still can be. I'll explain that in a while. The other one I want to make note of is here, this numpad enter remaps to left shift. Now if you type in just shift, that fires upon the button being released, which is kind of a problem. So you do need to put that specified L or R, so putting left shift in definitely is helpful. Although even having said that, sometimes I do have trouble with this, so I have commented out, but just be aware of that. If you can't get it to work, then you may not be able to remap enter, just depending, or you might, if you're smart enough, you might be able to come up with some hectic code and figure it out. Anyway, I'm not an expert. And then lastly is my mouse remap. Now, X button 1, X button 2, they're the two side buttons on my mouse, and I've got them pressing 1 and 2, which is your primary and secondary weapon in most FPSs. So that's why I've remapped that to that. I'm just used to that. And the right and left, you think, what the hell? That's a right and left. That's the keys on your keyboard. I've done that because this is Logitech G500, and I've assigned it so that the left and right scroll buttons press left and right, and then those remap to I and K, more buttons on the keyboard. It's a messy way of doing it, but just I couldn't get left scroll to work for some reason, because technically AutoHotKey accepts left and right scroll, so I can type in, I think it's wheel left, and then and remap that to something. But however, it doesn't work. I don't know why, if it's this mouse or something, but it wouldn't work for me. However, when I did it this way, it worked perfectly, so that's not a problem. And you might think, well, now you can't scroll left and right in in programs and stuff, but most of the time left and right will scroll to the left and right, so that's not too much of a problem. And if it is a problem, then I can always get rid of it. So that is the first script. Now, why are they separate? Well, this analog remapping here, all these lines from here to, where is it? No, it's too far. To here, that's the analog remapping. If I have that in the same script as the remapping for my pedal, for the POV stuff, which is this stuff here, no, here, this finishes here, it breaks, they both break each other. I don't know why, and if you're a genius at AutoHotKeys, you might be able to tell me why and fix it for me, and I'd be happy. I'll be able to put everything in one script instead of two. But at the moment, if I put them in separate scripts, they work fine. So that's just me being terrible at AutoHotkey scripts, but that's just the way it is, I suppose. So this is remapping I've got my left foot is the POV buttons, and my right foot is just more joys. So again, here's the 4 lines for the joys, for Joy 2, that's my left foot. And commenting is important, so I've got here, this shows me that this U is my left foot right, left foot forward, and left foot left, so I know which they're hitting. Left foot right, right foot right, oh sorry, right foot left, right foot forward, right foot right. And this one here, as you can see, it's commented out, and I've got that reserved for a macro in case I want to put a macro there, because I don't need this many buttons, so I might as well reserve some. And yeah, so that is essentially what I've got, except for I don't actually run both of these scripts at once, and I'll explain that. Will I explain it now, or will I explain it later? I'm not sure. Have I gone through my examples? Oh no, I'll explain why that later. So now I'm just going to go into some macros. Macros can be useful, and essentially if you have okay, you can get keyboards and mouses, like my mouse offers software where I can put macros on my mouse, but they're a bit of a joke. If you have AutoHotKeys, AutoHotKeys does a much better job. So here, this is an old script I used to use for, well, I still do use, for Counter-Strike Source. When I hit delete, I think this buys me a bunch of grenades and armor, so it basically just suits me up and I can then still pick what weapons I want, so that just buys me grenades and armor. So all I need to do is press delete, and it'll send B for the buy, then 6-3, and that'll be for a grenade, and one of these is for armor. And this here is important, can definitely help be useful when you're doing macros that just spam a bunch of stuff, because this here function is sleep, and then the number behind it is how long it just waits in milliseconds. So 1000 would be a second, so 100 is a tenth of a second, and you can make these however long you want, because sometimes certain things they won't like spamming. Like it might take a split second to open up a menu, so B opens up a menu and it spams 6 and 3 before B gets to open, then it may not get there. So the sleep function is definitely important, can be important when you're doing macros. And here's another macro which I use for Tribes Ascend, which is for using the mortar text message. So if you know anything about Tribes Ascend, or you know anything about projectiles actually, you probably know that a projectile can reach its target as long as it's not at max range with 2 angles. There's a high angle which takes longer and a low angle which is faster to get to. So in Tribes Ascend you can send a high mortar first and then a low mortar, and you can get the mortars to hit really close together, essentially doing double mortars, and it can be useful. So what this line here does is it moves the mouse, and it's relative to where it is. So I think this is, yes, this will be horizontal, and this here will be vertical movement, and this will be horizontal movement. And this is going to depend on, I don't think your DPI, but your in-game sensitivity will depend on. So anyway, and separating them into multiple lines with these sleep values means that it doesn't just jump to a position, it moves naturally, which you don't need to do, but I like the look of it. It actually looks like it's moving up, shooting, and then moving back down. So I forgot to explain what the script does. Is it actually moves my mouse up, and I figured it out so it was exactly 45 degrees, then shoots a mortar, and then brings the mouse back down to where it originally was. The reason for this is because the high mortars, well, on Tribes Ascend you can put your, explain this quickly, your FOV all the way up to 120, but even then, that's a horizontal FOV, meaning your vertical FOV is just under 90 degrees, and considering your reticle shoots, like your mortar will shoot directly out of your screen, and the reticle's in the middle of your screen, and then drops from there. From the middle of the screen to the bottom of the screen, you've got less than 45 degrees, which is not enough to do any of the high angles to line up on the mortar ladder on your screen, if that made any sense at all. So being able to use the mortar ladders that's already there, so this would, I just press the M button in, line it up with the ladder, the mortar ladder that I knew was going to work for the high mortar, press the M button, shoot my mouse up, shoot a mortar, same amount every time, bring it back down, and then I could shoot the low angle mortar and they would hit roughly same together, and that was good. So that was quite useful. And yeah, as far as macros go, you can then go on to things which aren't so much macros and more scripts, and you can, here's a simple macro. You can make a macro that left clicks for you, which in a lot of games is scoping in or aim down sights, and then very shortly after shoot, and then left click again to bring you out of, or whatever the game happens to be, and that essentially is a quick scoping script. Now that could definitely be considered cheating. So, and there's even, I know, see this, you've got mouse movement here. If a game has very predictable recoil, you could make a script that cancels or at least reduces recoil, and again that is definitely cheating. So you are able to cheat, like you're not going to get war hacks with AutoHotKeys, not that I know of, but you can cheat. So just be mindful of that and don't cheat, because that's what douchebags do. So yeah, they're just two basic macros as far as just like a do this macros go, and you can use those. So now I'm going to go over useful stuff, some other useful stuff you might want to know about. So in here, this, as you saw, I already had these remapped. This is the side buttons on my mouse. Now this is, the up symbol is the symbol for control. So this presses Control C and the other button presses Control V. So this is super convenient. Without having to touch the keyboard, I can copy, then paste, and I really like that. So that's some stuff you can do in case you hadn't thought of stuff like that. These scripts here, we do double columns, then more double columns, then what this does, it does an auto replace. So as you can see, by the way, BTW, auto expands to by the way. As soon as you hit something that's like a non-letter, I'm pretty sure. So I've got IK, I know, right? Like, so it just auto expands. And I've got some other stuff which is somewhat useless but still funny. Do stuff like that. No relevance really to remapping, but some other stuff you can do. This here you can use to open things. So in this case I've got Alt-T, this exclamation mark is the symbol for Alt. Alt-T will run both of those QWERTY things that I showed you before. So if you don't want to have the script running always, because let's say you want to use your NumPad sometimes and you don't want it pressing WASD, you want it pressing the actual numbers, you can have this to run it, and then you can close them when you're finished gaming, so to speak. So you can launch any program with that. You've just got to, as you can see, it just uses directory along and then the name of whatever you want to launch. However, what's more useful than this, what I've saying about launching scripts, is you can use this line here. If WinActive, this, rudder, or this, or this, which in my case I've just got 3 here. This is Valve. Now I use this for Counter-Strike Source, but it works for any Valve game, which in some ways can make your code more simple, but at the same time, if you want to have different scripts for different Valve games, then that might be an issue. So it's good and bad. This here is this long here. This is Launch Unreal. That's Tribes of Sand, and this is Battlefield Bad Company 2. But you can put anything else you want in there. Now, but how do you know the names? Like, I wouldn't have ever thought Tribes of Sand would be called. Like, I would never guess Launch Unreal Windows Client. So what you do is you go to this, which this will install with AutoHotKeys, is AutoIT on. Will it? You can get this anyway. It's free. AutoIT Windows Spy. And when you open this, I think, anyway, I'm confused myself. When you, whatever window's active, it'll come up here. So here we've got AHK class, whatever that. You just need to put that in. So Notepad. Actually, I'll show you. I'll give you an example. So if I just copy this, I can then put in here, or win active. Oops. Okay, so now anything that I put under the script will A will remap to B whenever any of these are running, including Notepad, if I run the script, that is. So that is useful in case you don't want to run the script separately. So I'll show you my actual script. Now I have a script running 24/7, and that's what the by the way auto expand stuff, that's all in a script that I always have running. Now you can make that script run 24/7 by, let me just pull it up. If you go oh wait, do I have it open? I don't. If you go right click all programs, go open all users, and you go programs, startup. In here you put, anything you put a shortcut to, or the actual thing itself, but shortcuts is easier. On startup it'll run it. So I've got that script which will start up on startup, essentially, which is this one here. So here I can see, here's my Control C, Control V. I do have, I swear I updated this, so I've still got this in here, but I really don't need that. I actually especially don't need this line. I'll save. And then I've got all these stupid expansions, some other crap. And then under here I've got if when active, now this is when this works, which is super useful here. So see this X button 1, X button 2? That's the side buttons on the mouse, like I explained earlier. They appear twice, but because they've got this when active here, this takes over and remaps these only when these windows are active, which means I can still use Control Paste as long as I'm not gaming. But once I open any of these games, I now get 1 and 2 instead of Control V, Control V. And every time I need a new game, then all you need to do is just add an extra OR to this little code here, and you'll be good to go. Now, like I said, Backspace, because it's under the if win, I can get rid of this comment and have Backspace remap to some letter, and it won't be a problem. As in, I can use it in gaming, and if I come out of gaming I want to start typing, I will still be able to use Backspace. However, if I want to type in game, then Backspace still won't work. You can get around it by remapping something else to Backspace, but that's a bit of a weird thing. But you've got Backspace on your might have Backspace on your NumPad, depending. So you might want to take advantage of it. It's up to you. Rada. Like I said, I had some trouble with this NumPad enter remapping L shift. That was when I just ran the script by itself, but when it's in this, under the if when active, it seemed to come good. I don't know what's going on there, I'm not an expert, but that has seemed to worked. I think that's about it. There's only one other thing. What have I not explained anything? I hope I haven't explained anything. I think that's about it, really. Yeah. One other thing, convert AHK to EXE. If you want to, so these are, you're running scripts, they're just things basically typed in Notepad, and because you've got AutoHotKeys installed, you can run the scripts. However, if let's say you take your GamePad to someone else's computer, like someone else's house, who knows, and you don't want to install AutoHotkey on their computer, you can use this program to convert a script you already have to an executable, which means all you need to do is take a flash drive with that executable on and double click and you'll be running happy as Larry. So that's an option if you happen to have, like, or maybe it's a LAN party, who knows. But if you want to convert something to EXE, that's useful. I actually have used this in my my keyboard is actually a Dvorak. So across here, even though you can't see the keys, you probably know this is supposed to be QWERTY, but as you can see, I'm getting some funky stuff going on here. Nothing to do with QWERTY, and that's because I'm running a Dvorak keyboard. I can't really type in QWERTY because I'm used to Dvorak. So when I go to uni, that's a problem for me. And instead of going through all the settings to change it to a Dvorak, which sometimes I can't even do because they've got special settings on the uni computers, so don't make it too open. Well, I just found a script online that converted QWERTY to Dvorak, converted to an EXE. It's like 200 kilobytes. Chuck it on my USB, and then when I'm at the uni computers, just need to whack my USB in and run that, and I've got a Dvorak keyboard back, which is that's something I find useful. Not that it's related. I should say that if you have any trouble with this, chances are I'm not going to be able to answer it. I've pretty much covered everything I know. Like I said, I'm running 2 scripts because those 2 scripts, those other 2 codes break each other. I'm not super good at this, so if you have something you have trouble with, you can try ask me, but chances are I won't be able to answer it. Your best hope is there's this help file. This is actually quite useful for a lot of the basic stuff. You can then also go on the forums or just Google in general. Google the problem you have, and if you still can't find it, go into the forums themselves. That AutoHotKey site does have a forum section, and there's heaps of super wizards there that you just say, yeah, I'm having trouble with this, and no doubt someone will reply and give you answers to that. Hopefully I've covered everything I wanted to cover because I don't really want to record this again. Thanks for watching. Hitting one of those like, favorite, sub buttons, I'm really happy when anyone hits one of those. Links will be in the description for my scripts. I'm not sure how I'll do that. It might just be the script pasted straight in because that might be super easy. I've got to figure out if I actually just post the actual scripts, I might find a good hosting website. If anyone's got any ideas, because you might look and it's not there. If you look and it's not there and you know a good hosting website for that sort of stuff, send me a link and I'll get onto it. I might be a bit lazy with that. So yeah, I suppose this is the part where I put some links up. I'll probably put a sniping montage link up and something else. Maybe, who knows? I'll put some annotations. You know what they're like. You've seen them before in my other videos. Yeah. Sorry, this is a bit of a. Well, I didn't script this. I normally type out what I'm going to say, which leads me to having a very monotone